Resurrection of the Daleks is a story with a lot of death in it. You may have heard this fact already, but this episode has a higher on-screen body count than The Terminator. This fact alone puts this episode in high standing. After all, some of the best Dalek stories are filled with death. But good Dalek episodes need more than just death. They need a good story. And Resurrection of the Daleks has story in droves. Too much story, one might add, as there are lots of intricate plot threads going on in this episode. The Daleks are attempting to pull off several schemes at once in a huge grand plan involving the Doctor, Davros, the Magellan virus, Dalek duplicates of humans on Earth and Time Lords on Gallifrey apparently, time corridors, double agents, an attack on a prison facility, and the use of bizarrely dressed Dalek troopers. There is so much going on in this episode that everything I mentioned there is just scratching the surface. I didn't even mention the human soldiers and scientists who work on Earth with Tegan, or Lytton, the leader of the Dalek troopers, or my personal favourite, the crew of the prison station who form a resistance against the Dalek attack throughout the story, culminating in a failed attempt to destroy the station to kill Davros. Resurrection of the Daleks is jam-packed, so you might be expecting me to say that the huge number of narrative elements makes this story bad, but that just isn't the case. Resurrection of the Daleks has a lot going for it. Its only drawbacks is that it has a convoluted plot with lots of branching stories, but if you can sort out each of the plots and follow what's going on, then it's a great ride. Like Revelation of the Daleks, Resurrection of the Daleks probably requires more than one viewing, at least it did for me. This might be a downside for some people, as often the first viewing of this episode is like trying to sort out a 5,000 piece jigsaw puzzle under time conditions while blindfolded, but it's a really enjoyable episode regardless. It's got Eric Saywood's grim sense of humour, it's got some wonderful Davros scenes involving great dialogue between him and Lytton, and also later in the story between him and the Doctor. The Daleks are suitably merciless, brutal and efficient, and we get to see some of their devious battle tactics in this episode, such as using gas against the station's defenders. This story also depicts the opening moves of the Dalek Civil War, and one of my favourite scenes in the episode is when two Daleks argue over their respective loyalties, one who is loyal to the Dalek Supreme, and another who's been brainwashed by Davros. It's like a microcosm of the Dalek Civil War yet to come, a little teaser of the epic Dalek battles in the later 80s Dalek episodes. The Dalek voices in this episode are particularly good. The voices were provided by Brian Miller and Royce Mills. Miller did Dalek voices in this episode and Remembrance of the Daleks, and Mills did Dalek voices for this episode, Revelation of the Daleks, and Remembrance of the Daleks. The shrill, impatient and ruthless qualities of the Dalek voices in the 80s were an important aspect of their character, and Resurrection of the Daleks has some excellent Dalek lines that are delivered well by these two voice artists. The Daleks in this episode are vulnerable due to their war with the Magellans, pushing them to the brink of extinction, but this arguably just makes them more dangerous. They are quick to fire, they are difficult to stop, and Resurrection of the Daleks contains a rare example of a Dalek mutant existing outside of its casing, as after the battle armour is destroyed, the Dalek mutant skulks in the shadows and attacks people with a venomous bite. This, coupled with the punchy extermination sound effect and excellent visual effects, makes the Daleks appear threatening again after their lacklustre previous appearances in Destiny of the Daleks and the Five Doctors. The props have a new grey paint job, and while they aren't entirely uniform, they certainly look a lot better than the more obvious mismatched paint jobs that these props previously sported. The Dalek Supreme also looks great in this episode, the first appearance of a black Dalek since the 1960s. The final act of this episode is definitely its strongest, and the scene with the Doctor confronting Davros is a masterclass in tense dialogue and brilliant character interactions that showcase why a character like Davros is important for developing the Doctor's relationship with the Daleks. Resurrection of the Daleks is a bleak story filled with death, betrayal and failure. Yet it also manages to be an engaging and enjoyable Dalek story, showcasing their strengths and weaknesses and using both to great effect. Since Genesis of the Daleks in 1975, the Daleks had been languishing in a smog of mediocre appearances and long hiatuses. But in 1984, the Daleks were truly resurrected, with an action-packed epic that defined the 80s Dalek stories yet to come and cemented the Daleks as an enduring cornerstone of Doctor Who as a show. What do you think of Resurrection of the Daleks? Let me know your thoughts on this episode in the comments below.